Hey, Kenzie, welcome so much for coming on today. I am so excited to hear your story and how you left the corporate real world and everything that you're doing right now. But before we get started, can you just introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Kenzie. I'm a life and mindset coach and breathwork facilitator, and I really just help women get unstuck and help them live this big, beautiful life that they want to live.
Oh my gosh, I love that for so many reasons. So many reasons. There's a million questions I want to ask you just rolling through my head right now.
Let's
But
go.
but I know, right? All right. But I want to build that foundation first for our listeners of
Yeah.
how you got where you are. So you were working the corporate world
hmm
and not really happy. You were thinking about making a shift,
hmm
but chose not to. Uh,
hmm
so what was it like when that shift was forced on you?
Yeah, good question. So I actually ended up, I was starting my business on the side and always knew I wanted, well, and to be honest, I never thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It just kind of came upon me. And then when I was still in corporate and thinking about leaving, I didn't want to leave because you get into this job and it's comfortable and it's cushy and you're collecting this paycheck. And of course there's the doubts of like, what if this doesn't work out? How can I just leave this security? But one day I got called in out of the blue and I got laid off. And so, in the moment I couldn't see it, but it was really the universe saying like, boom, push you off the cliff. You have to go because if we don't do it for you, you're never going to do it. Right. And so, of
Yes.
course, I always call it like a pity party. Of course, in the moment, I threw a pity party and felt sorry for myself and processed. But, months later, as I could kind of see everything start to align, is when like trust really hit me and I learned to trust and to say
Ooh.
everything that happened had to happen for me to be here.
You make that sound so easy. And
Yeah, right. And right now I do, but in
yeah.
the moment, no.
Yeah, it's not, right? 'Cause so
No.
somebody might be listening and they're going through and I agree with you 100%. Like, I truly am a believer that everything happens for a reason, even when we don't understand it in the moment. When we look back, we understand why something
hmm
happened or why it had to happen. But when you're in it, it's hard to see, and sometimes you can't make sense. You're like, "Why is this happening to me? I'm a great employee, like, why me? Why is this
hmm
happening?" And you said that you had to learn to trust, which I
hmm
really love, but how do you do that?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Really for me it was, I don't know if I learned it, but it was shown to me where, when I got laid off, I immediately was like, okay, I need to find another job. And my husband, being the saint that he was like, wait, like, why are you looking for these jobs that don't even interest you anymore? Nothing fits. Like, do your business. And so because I allowed that space and said, like, okay, I am being given this opportunity for a reason. And then at the same time, we had kind of just all this life stuff hit, COVID hit, and my husband had to apply for his dietetics program, and everything just lined up where we ended up moving home. And all of those things, like, of course, in the moment they suck. But then at the end, I was like, oh, so I got laid off so that he wouldn't go crazy driving to LA every day. So we could move home and do this and buy a house. Like, everything lined up perfectly. And so when I saw how things lined up, it was like, I have to trust that when things happen, it's happening for a reason. And so now, because I saw the proof of it, when something happens, I'm kind of like, okay, it still sucks, but
Yeah.
is there an opportunity? Is there something I'm missing? Is this happening for a reason? Right. So it's like, it still sucks. It's probably always going to, but knowing that something is probably on the other side that is better.
Yes. Yeah. Now, are you typically a positive person?
I'd say yes.
Okay, I was guessing based on your response because I am typically a very positive person and I will always look for the silver lining in something. And I was
hmm
listening to you and I am like, I get it. Like, I get it. I would be doing the same thing, going through the same thing. Not
Mhm.
everybody is. And that's a hard transition, but I think you're spot on. Like, you have to just trust whatever is happening. And now it's kind of funny because I gave a speech and I talk about this a lot, is failing forward. And
Mm,
now when I have those little failures, I
mhm,
get a little excited because I'm like, "Oh, I'm like one step closer to something really cool." Like, I
mhm.
don't look at it anymore as a bad thing. I look at it now as a learning experience. So I'm not afraid of failing. I'm like facing it, head on now, which was different the way that I had always grown up,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't even try out for things in school because I was afraid I would fail. So I missed out on some cool stuff because of it. So I
Mhm.
love that you said to trust. I think
Yeah.
that's so important. Now, you're certified in NLP. I
Yes.
think which I think is so cool. That whole topic is super, super cool.
I love it. I
And
love it.
oh my gosh, I am like, my degree's in psychology, and there are so many times I wanted to pull the trigger on taking some courses in NLP, like
Yeah.
just recently. Mm, But it's like there's everything else as a priority. That would be for fun. What
Yeah.
is NLP? Because I do want to talk
Yeah.
about that because I think it's just so cool.
Yeah, so NLP is neuro linguistic programming. So, neuro, brain, linguistic, the language that we use, and programming, what I call your map of the world, your programming in your brain. And we all have unique programming based on how we were raised, what we saw, society, social media, TV, all the things that surround us create our programming. And so, a lot of times we have programming or a map of the world that isn't quite working for us. It's holding us back. It's keeping us from doing the things we want to do. And in neurolinguistic programming, they say your beliefs, your map of the world is formed from 0 to 7 years old. And so I always say to people, I'm like, do you want 7-year-old you or maybe even 5-year-old you running your life? Probably not, right? Like you don't need 5-year-old you making
Interesting.
adult decisions for you. And so we can really use the language that we use and different tools to help shape the way we show up in the world and our different patterns, beliefs, and thoughts.
That I can geek out and have a conversation with you
I
about that
know.
for hours.
I
I know.
know.
Like, stay on track, Deanna, stay on track.
Yeah.
So when did you realize that you were interested in NLP?
Yeah. So it was like kind of in the middle of my journey. I was still in corporate. And when I was in corporate at the beginning, I was really struggling just with my physical, emotional, mental health because I had really lost myself to work. I just thought, my whole identity is work, and my husband was deployed at the time. And so it's all I did. And so I knew something had to change. And so I became, first started working on my own health. And as I became interested in that, I was like, other women must be struggling with this in the corporate world. So I became a health coach and personal trainer. And then from there, while I was training people, I realized something was missing in that because a lot of my clients weren't showing up for themselves. Their confidence was really low. They weren't changing their habits. And they were telling me they wanted to do all these things and to change, but they weren't following through, which I think we can all relate to, right? When we
Yeah.
try to make change.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm like,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm like, something's missing, but I just don't know what because it's like, it's effective, but it's just not quite there. Like, I can do better with these clients. And so, didn't really know what it was, but I ended up going to this conference and all my friends there were talking about NLP. I had never heard of it. And then one of the speakers came up and he did this NLP technique with us and was just talking about it. And I was like, this is it. And that's one of those trust pieces where I was like, how did I think of this and then end up in this room? And this was brought to me about like NLP. Never heard of it before in
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into it and researching it. And I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the missing piece. And so then I got, I have 3 different certifications in it now. And along with that, clinical hypnotherapy, Reiki, breathwork.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And so what advice like would you give to women who are in this transitional time, right? And
Yeah.
they're afraid. And I'm going back a little bit to like when you were in the corporate world, they're afraid to step out of that comfort zone the same way that you were.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what would you tell them so that they go and they pursue those dreams that they have?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just, I think society tells us that life has to look one way or a certain way, and we can like get kind of stuck in that. Oh, I have to have a corporate job and I have to work 9 to 5, and that's just the way life is. But if I would
Mm-hmm.
tell a woman who's like, I really want to like own my own business and I see myself doing it, simply say, like, go for it. Your life can look however you want it to look. You can design any life you want. Like, if you want to work Monday through Wednesday, do it. It's just like we get so stuck in what society tells us, and we get to
Mm.
dream, we get to do big things. So I would just say go for it.
Ah, yes. You're speaking my language. So I was creeping on your website, and you
Yes.
do work, and I'm going to talk about getting unstuck because I want to learn a little bit more
Yeah.
about that and how do you
Hmm.
get unstuck. But you talk about your superpower and discovering your superpower.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, when did you discover your superpower and what is it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. So
Yeah.
I would say, when I was thinking about this, my superpower is helping others and listening. And that's why I'm a life coach now. I would have never thought to be a life coach, like I said, but I've always been really good at helping people and leading people and listening to them and helping them come up with solutions, even when I was a kid. And so I'd say that's my superpower, is just listening people and supporting them.
And so when you knew that and you're like, yeah, this is it,
Hmm.
did it change or impact you in a certain way as far as your professional journey? Or
Yeah.
did it just make sense?
Well, so, and I actually told this story on my Instagram the other day, and I didn't put two and two together until recently. But when I was in corporate, I always got the feedback, you have your like yearly, quarterly meetings, whatever. And I always got the feedback, like, you're here too much for the employees and you're not here enough for the company. Like, they wanted me to be more of a yes man and not question things, right? And, if I felt like something was unfair for my team, I would voice it. And they didn't like that. And I can understand why a company wouldn't, but it just didn't feel right to me. Like, as a manager, I felt like I was there to support my team and make sure they were successful. And so I'm like, how freaking cool is it that like now I am here for the employee, the person, right? Like, I get to listen to them and support them. So I really would say more recently, I was like, oh, yeah, like I can make a living out of this, and my superpower can be my career.
Yes. Isn't it the best feeling when like something that is said to you in a negative way
Hmm.
turns around and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I was like,
exactly who I am, and that's
yeah.
so cool. Like, I mean, every single report card of mine growing up, there is a line that says, "Deanna talks too much. She'd be a better student if she was just quiet." And I'm
And
like,
you have a
now
podcast.
I have a podcast. I get paid to go and speak at conferences. I am like, that kind of worked out for me.
Right.
That really
Totally.
wasn't such a bad thing.
Not at all. And we could probably tie that back to NLP when someone's like, you talk too much, be quiet. You do this. And of course, you're in your mind, you could just be like, oh, be quiet. But when we can
Yeah.
challenge what people have told us and challenge those beliefs, like that's when you get to do the cool stuff.
Yeah. And that might be my personality, to challenge what people tell me.
Yeah, which is good.
So I want to talk about getting unstuck
Hmm.
because you work with a lot of women. So first off, like when we say getting stuck, and you hear that a lot, like
Yeah.
where are you seeing most women get stuck? Like
Yeah.
in what capacity?
Most women, and I always say, like, I'm just one step ahead on the women that I support, or two steps ahead. Like, these women I work with were me when I was in corporate.
Mm,
It's, or even if you were like a stay-at-home mom or own your own business, but in general, these feelings of like, I just don't know who I am anymore. I want to do all these things, but I'm not following through. I just feel stuck. Like, there's more. I know there's more, but I just can't get myself to make changes. Or I want to start a business. I just don't know how. It's just these general feelings of feeling like they've lost themselves.
mm. And what do you do when you feel like that? Like, how do you help them overcome it? And I'm not going to have you give
Yeah.
all your secrets away because
I give
you're
all
going
my
to have
trade
to work
secrets
with
away.
you're going to have to work with Kenzie to really dive into it. But give
Yeah.
us just some basic ideas of, like how about we'll start with what's the biggest mistake we make when we're stuck?
Ooh, yeah. Biggest mistake we make is like beating ourselves up. So a lot of the women I work with are like, well, why can't I? And oh, I suck and all this and all that. And the more we judge ourselves and the more we beat ourselves up, we get stuck on this hamster wheel. And right, it just keeps going around and around.
Yeah.
And so I'm always saying, like, question your thoughts. Like, where have I proven myself wrong before? Where have I shown myself that I can follow through? And it's just one tiny change, right? Just start with something small. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, is what's keeping women stuck is just that self-judgment and that guilt. As far as when I work with women, and you can tell me if you want me to go deeper on these, but I would say in general, I kind of divide it up into three areas. So divide it up into what I'd call strategy, mind, and body. So the
Okay.
strategy is really, what does self care look like for you? Do you have boundaries in your life? Are you self sabotaging? Really getting back to those foundations of like putting yourself first and learning what excites you again, because we forget that,
Yeah.
like, even if you're a mom, that you get to have your own identity. So that's more the
Oh boy.
strategy, right?
It's like say it one more time. My kids are grown, but I remember when they were younger, right? You
Yeah.
are not, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was
No,
like,
go
woo,
ahead.
like you are so on point because
Yeah.
when you're a mom, it's kind of like you're, and I'm not saying
You're
just
just a
in
mom. Yeah.
that, right, right. When I say that, it's like you lose you because you pour everything in to your child or children.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I'm sure I got
Yep.
you way off track because
No, that's okay. No,
I was like, go ahead.
it's so important to like tell people that you don't just have to have one identity and to take care of yourself first. Then we talk about the mind piece. So that is a lot of like, what are your beliefs? What are your thoughts? Are you constantly telling yourself you can't do things? Do you have low self-confidence? So doing a lot of those neuro-linguistic programming techniques to help them
Mhm.
start to change those beliefs. And then the body. So the body is the part that gets neglected a lot. A lot of our beliefs and our memories live in our body. So, breath work, Reiki, we do parts work, which is part of NLP, and that connects the mind and the body. So, when we have all this stress, guilt, even beliefs of I can't do this, I'm not good enough, those live in the body as well. So, we want to make sure we're addressing all three areas.
Interesting. I did not know that. So how does it, because I'm very naive with this, I
Okay.
don't, how does that work? Like,
Mhm.
give me an example of how you would like remove it from your body. Is that what you do? You remove that thought from your
Yeah.
body?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make it like super simple. So,
Yeah.
when we do breath work, that's like my main technique. So as women especially, we have a lot of emotions, as we should. That's how we are made. But when life gets busy, we kind of shove stuff down, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have to go do this, but I'm sad, but I don't have time to process it, or somebody made me upset, but I'm just going to push it down and like keep moving. And we're
Yeah.
always in our head, but we don't take time to feel what's in our body. And that's why we all are so anxious all the time and can't be present, because we're here and not in the body. So when we talk about breath work with those emotions, we kind of push them down, and they get, for lack of a better term, just stuck. They get stuck in the body and they can't move out. And when we have so much emotion built up, we have a hard time making decisions, following through, trusting ourselves. And so with breath work, we just do this very specific breathing pattern to help you move stuff out of your body. So a lot of times when we do breath work, women will cry, they'll laugh, I've had people like yell. And sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes people are just breathing. There's not this big reaction. But
Yeah.
always after breath work, there's this walk on water feeling where you just feel so much lighter and like you've let all this junk go.
That is so interesting. I've never talked to anybody about that before
Ooh, I'm
with
going to send
breath.
you a link so
Yeah.
you can come to my next breathwork session.
Yes. I mean, do you have those online?
Yeah, I do them virtual.
Or do you? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. I'm like I'm a newbie to that thought. So
I
this
think you
is
would love it.
interesting and I'm like I probably would because I
I
I like
say
all that stuff.
Everybody needs it. And even like because coming back to entrepreneurs, of course there's the strategy side and the logistics
Yeah.
of business, but there's also the energetic side of business. And if you're constantly holding on to all this crap, it's hard to be aligned in your business. So the energetics is really important too.
It really is. I mean,
Mhm.
because I mean, we as women, we wear a lot of hats and,
Mhm.
and we're wired to be nurturers, right? So we try to take care of everything. And a lot of times we put ourselves on the back burner and neglect ourselves. So,
Mhm.
and how long does it take, like the breath work? Like, is it
Um it's like about like 35 to 45 minutes.
okay? And is that something you can do on your own? Like, once you know how to do that to
Absolutely.
kind of help yourself get unstuck?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice the first few times to be guided so that you can get the breath and kind of the pacing. And just like anything, it's a little uncomfortable because you've never done it before, like meditation, like your mind kind of wanders, breath work, your mind might wander the first few times you do it. So I always think it's nice to be guided, but once you understand the breath and like kind of how to do it, you can absolutely do it on your own.
Oh, that's interesting. How often do you do your lives?
I do them once a month right now, but I'm thinking about doing them more. I just did a poll and people were like, I like morning, I like afternoon, I like night. So I was like, okay,
Oh,
I
I know
gotta,
you
yeah.
like.
Yeah, I was like, no. But I need to figure it out. I'm gonna try to start varying them and I might do them like 2 times a month.
Yeah, I hear you. I offer different things and I get that too. It's like everybody's schedule. It's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
it's I know. It's like, how do I make everybody happy? Right? That's like the people pleaser in me.
Yep, absolutely.
So how long have you been doing this? Is it, and I'm trying to go from memory, has it been 10 years or over 10 years?
No, less than. So, this
Okay.
January will be 4 years full time in my business. And then I would say, with like me being in corporate and starting it, it's probably been about 6 years.
Okay. So any regrets?
Any regrets? Good question. Um, I don't think so. I'm like really freaking proud of myself for doing this. Not everybody will take the leap and do it. Um,
I
I'm
love
like,
that.
I'm
I'm
like, I
hoping
want
there's
to
no
think on that.
regrets, but
No, or like anything I would change.
yes, what would you change if you were if you knew then what you know now and you were back in that corporate office, not very happy with what you were doing before you walked in and got laid off, what would you tell yourself if you had coffee with you?
Yeah. If I knew then what I knew now, I probably would have left my corporate job without being needed to be pushed off the ledge. And I mean, there's so much strategy and different things you learn along the way, but something that I would say to people who are trying to become entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurs is we get so caught up in what everyone else is doing, what strategy they're using, how they launch, how they post, what they're, just everything other people are doing. And just know that you know everything inside of you. Like when I have said, like, no, I'm not going to launch how she's launching. I'm going to do what feels good to me and I'm going to show up really authentically and show up in my business. That's when my business has flourished. And so just knowing that like you do have the answers within you and you don't always have to rely on somebody else to do that for you.
Thank you for sharing that. That seems to be a theme statement in
Hmm.
the podcast I recorded right before you.
Oh, really?
She said something very similar. I'm sure you guys are going to go live back to back. So if you're listening to
Perfect.
this and you didn't listen to last week's episode, go back and listen to that one next because they both have a very similar message
It
for
means
you.
it needs to be heard, right?
It does need to be heard. It does. So Kenzie, how can we find you to work with you?
Yeah, so mostly Instagram is Kenz Grow, KENZGROH. And then my website is a great place to just see different things that I offer, more about my coaching, and that's kensgrowcoaching.com.
Awesome. Kenzie, thank you so much for being here today. I learned a lot. I learned things that
Good.
I've never learned before. And now you've got me super curious. So
I
I'm going to
love it.
dig in deeper and
Yes,
find
thank you
out
so
more.
much for having me.
You are welcome. All right, everybody. We will catch you next week.